Hi everyone, today I'm here with Captain Tim Adams, a retired firefighter captain who's been serving the Sacramento community for over 30 years, as well as Ponce, who's a firefighter reserve and EMT. So thank you guys both for being part of this interview. And so today we're going to be talking about both firefighting and EMT. We have two individuals who've been serving in that field for a while here to explain the profession to us. So before we go into the details, could you guys kind of explain what firefighting entails and what EMT entails? It seems like there's a lot of crossover, or as you guys mentioned before we started this interview.
So I currently work as an EMT. So we blend together, we show up together. So on the EMT side of things, I work with a paramedic, and we do the transport here in Sacramento. The fire department holds both the engine response or truck response along with the ambulance response and transports to local hospitals as well for medical emergencies or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and as firefighters, we are first responders in Sacramento. So anytime anyone calls 911 for any type of medical emergency or any type of fire emergency rescue type situation, the fire department is the first one to respond on scene to handle it. We'll dispatch a first responder. It'd either be an engine or a truck company on a medical aid call along with an ambulance.
Okay, and when you mentioned first responders, what are the things that you guys are called in for usually? I mean, obviously when you hear firefighter, you think fires, but it seems like there's more to it than just fires, right?
I mean, absolutely, yeah. Anytime anyone is seeking emergency medical care and they feel they need to go to the hospital, that's when they'll call 911, and that's when we will dispatch our equipment and provide our medical personnel who work both as firefighters and EMTs or paramedics.
And what would you say the proportion is for like fires versus like other, like let's say trauma or other kind of different cases that pop up?
I'd say it's about probably 80-85% of our responses are for medical aids.
Okay. So it's actually more the medical side rather than like fires and things like that, maybe around here?
Correct, yeah. Since, probably transitioning from the 1970s moving forward, fire departments became more active working EMS. So when that happened, the call volume increased. Just to give an example, when I came on the fire department here in 1985, we were probably averaging about 20-some thousand calls a year, and now the city of Sacramento experiences over 90,000 calls for service every year. So it's quadrupled.
And are there different specialties of like firefighting or EMT, or is it you go into it and you cover like everything?
Basically, you're exposed to everything, but we do have specific companies that are highly trained and dedicated to hazardous materials response. We have water response teams. We have a rescue company that can respond and confined space, rope rescue, high angle, anything like that too. So there are definitely very specific areas. Everybody has some general training in all of that, but we do have those individuals assigned to specific companies that take on those responsibilities. They are trained at a higher level.
And how would you guys describe maybe a typical day in your life from when you come in to when you leave? And does that change throughout the week? What are your guys' hours like? How's the lifestyle really?
It's always 24 hours or 48-hour shifts. So we come in together, we pre-trip all the rigs, which means we go to all the apparatuses, check them out, top to bottom, make sure the wheels are fine, make sure the engine's working, and then go from there, usually to a sit down and what we're going to do for the day, how we're going to shop for food, because we all cook together, we eat together, we sit down and really get into it, and then every day's training. At least here we try to do 3 hours of training a day. And that's pretty common with most fire departments because you need to be on top of what you're doing. You never know what you're going to respond to. Like you mentioned, there's hazardous materials, water. Anytime someone calls 911 is when the fire department's going to come out. So you got to be ready for everything. So that training is really, really crucial.
So the 24 to 40-hour shifts, how many do you have a week? And how many hours total would you work?
So typically they break it up into A, B, and C shift. So each shift is 48 hours. And then if you're assigned to A shift, every time A shift comes around, you're on for 40 hours and you're off for
96.
Yep.
Okay. So you have a couple of groups and they kind of rotate through?
3 shifts, yeah. So basically, you average 56 hours a week as a standard firefighter shift, which again is 48 hours on, 96 hours off, and you just rotate through that rotation. So it's a 6-day rotation. So on one given week, you will work a Saturday, Sunday. The next week, it'll be a Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday. It just keeps bouncing back since it's a 6-day rotation.
It's definitely not a normal 9 to 5.
No, definitely doesn't work like that. Yeah.
So you guys end up like sleeping here, or?
Yes. Yeah, we have full dorm facilities. I mean, like you said, this is basically our home.
Yeah.
So, we call it a firehouse. But we take care of all the maintenance on the station, take care of all the yard work, keeping all the apparatus clean, keeping the station clean, and maintaining everything in the station. That's what we kind of separate ourselves from other city agencies, is that we don't have a cleaning service that comes in or a landscaping maintenance service that does. We maintain our own facilities since we are here, for the 48 hours or whatever. So it makes for puts a little more responsibility on us. But being that we are here and we do sleep here, it's pretty common that would be a normal procedure for us.
It's cool. It's a very fraternal kind of organization. It seems like where if you're spending so much time with other people, I'm sure you have strong bonds, and
exactly.
You're doing everything here.
It's a family. It is 100%. You learn. You go through a lot of tough situations. You work with people constantly, so you build a real strong bond. And we are. I mean, we develop very much of a kind of a family type environment here. Take care of each other.
Going on to the different aspects of firefighting and being an EMT, what would you say is the most challenging aspect of your profession?
Not knowing what you're getting yourself into. You can be dispatched for something, let's say shortness of breath, but when you show up, it's completely different. So you can never expect what you're going into, and I think that's the most challenging because people want to wrap their minds around, I'm going to this, and then when they get there, if it's not what it is, sometimes they get flustered. And I feel like I personally think that's the most difficult portion of it.
It's a dangerous profession. There's a lot of injuries involved. Different types of fire calls and so forth. So, like Ponce was saying, you really never know what sometimes you're going to be thrown into. You're seeing people who are in a desperate situation, so that can wear on first responders a lot. You see people who are having trouble in their life, they're calling for assistance. It can be overwhelming. Our ambulance companies can respond to well over 20 calls in a 24-hour period. So they may leave the station and not even return to the station for 8, 9, 10 hours. Maybe they're here for 20, 30 minutes. They're back out for another 2, 3 hours. Our engine and truck companies have a lot quicker turnaround, but just the fact that it's such a high demand, lack of sleep is very much an issue. So we try and keep track of each other and try and make sure that we stay as rested as possible so that we are ready to respond. But it's the unknown, and it's the danger factor that kind of follows the profession. But again, that's what we train for. We very much, we love what we do. People are attracted to this profession are those who like to help people. They get a lot of satisfaction, out of providing a service, serving the community, and serving the people.
And on the flip side, you mentioned the brotherhood aspect being one of the big draws to the profession. What else is the most rewarding, or are the most rewarding aspects of the career?
I personally love when you've made a direct impact on someone's life, and for the positive. We're going on to the worst days imaginable. So if you call 911, this is going to be your worst day because you need someone to help you out right then and there. And if I can come in and help you out and see that my hands directly helped you, I leave home feeling accomplished. I leave home knowing that I did something good today that I could never do again, or going to do again. You never know, because the calls you can never expect what you're going to get. So I love that.
Okay. I think too, I look at it too also is that I love the challenge that it provides, and I love the camaraderie that you get out of working as part of a team. We don't work as individuals. You work as part of a crew, and it is such a family environment and everything. It's a type of profession that I loved coming to work every day. I think that's the part of it that I enjoyed, was that feeling of belonging to something kind of bigger than yourself and being able to contribute to something.
Are there any misconceptions about being an EMT or a firefighter that you guys have noticed?
I very commonly see people in lower income communities call 911 for an ambulance, thinking that we can do everything that a hospital can without going to the hospital. We're there to help you out and stabilize you, but we can't always fix what's going wrong. That's going to be the hospital's job.
So kind of managing expectations then is a big thing.
It's a very busy system. Kind of like I mentioned before, the demand on the EMS system has quadrupled, in the last 40 years over that. So hospitals are very busy. Emergency rooms are packed. There's people waiting in gurneys and hallways and waiting rooms. The whole system is impacted, and a lot of it happened when, instead of going to a primary care physician or a clinic, we started transporting people to hospitals because they felt they would get seen faster and that they would get a higher level of care. And we don't turn anybody away, so it has put a huge burden on the emergency medical, the emergency rooms in the hospitals, and the workload of all the emergency doctors and nurses.
You talked a little bit about the different departments. I think you call them companies.
Mm-hmm.
What's the training to become an EMT and a firefighter? And then what tips would you give people who are interested in pursuing the field to get into those programs?
The EMT schools are usually just like a semester-long class for most community colleges. There's private ones as well. Typically, it's like 6 months to do from start to finish. And that's what you need bare minimum to get into a department. But if someone's really looking into firefighting, I highly recommend starting to volunteer at first. So that way you get the exposure, come in, and know if you like it or not. Because a lot of people come in and they don't know really what they want, and so they try it out, which is great. Right? Some people like it, some people don't. And then, especially here at this department, it's the reserves. So we spent a year and a half training for the Firefighter 1 curriculum, really learning and understanding it. And then people were going to EMT school at the same time. I'm going to eventually go to medic school in a few months as well. So it's all combined in one here. And I really like that. So if someone wants to get into it, I recommend either starting EMT school, or then when you're in EMT school, you go on a ride-along. So you know if you like being on the ambulance or not, and then come into a firehouse and try to volunteer to know if you like the culture.
And you mentioned being a medic. Is that paramedic? And then what additional training would you need for that?
So EMT 6 months, and a paramedic program typically a year to a year and 6 months. So the difference is an EMT can help out with oxygen, it can assist giving medications, whereas a paramedic's a lot more aggressive in doing with cardiac issues. So cardioversions, pacing, giving medications, IVs, IOs, and depending on what state you are, it expands more and more.
Mm-hmm. And so for being a firefighter, you need to be an EMT. Do you also need to be a paramedic?
Not necessarily, depending on the department. Mm-hmm. Some departments are BLS, some departments have ALS. It definitely boosts your shots of getting hired being a paramedic, because you're more desirable on the field, because like he mentioned before, the fire department is always going to get there first because they're more centrally located to where the call volume is coming from. So if you show up on scene and you're a paramedic, you can do a lot more interventions than you could if you were an EMT.
And you mentioned the different companies. Is that something anyone can get into, or is there special training you have to do to get into the specialized departments?
Well, so basically what will happen is a department will decide to hire, depending on the size of the department, how big how many people they need at any given time or whatever. Some departments will offer their own testing process, but most commonly now in the state of California in this area, it's called FCTC. It's the Fire Candidate Testing Center. So you go to a central location, you take a standardized test, which is a written test, kind of a general knowledge, mechanical aptitude style test. You also go through a physical performance test, what we used to call physical agility or whatever, and just for strength and endurance to show that you're physically fit enough to do the job. It's all standardized, and then a department like the City of Sacramento would contact the agency, and they would pull candidates from the eligibility list that have been established through this testing center, and then they are notified, and then they would complete the testing process actually through the Sacramento Fire Department, which would be an EMS test, and then also going through background investigation and a medical exam by a doctor.
Okay, and that's for becoming a general firefighter?
Yes, but to be a firefighter everywhere now in California, you have to be an EMT. Mm-hmm. So that everybody has to have their EMT in order to be considered eligible for a firefighter position. And then depending on the different agency, whether they want to hire paramedic firefighters or EMT firefighters. Mm-hmm. We have a combination of both. So some ambulances will run 2 paramedics on. Some ambulances will run an EMT and a paramedic. All of our first responders, which are all our engine companies, which provide water, hose and water on the fires. We have truck companies, which they specialize in search, removal, ventilation. So they all have paramedics assigned to those rigs. So when they respond, they can provide the highest level of medical care within the shortest amount of time. We're required to be on scene in less than 5 minutes. I think 90% of the time, or I believe. So we have to meet that goal every year.
Okay, and so the different companies, like the truck or is it the hose?
Engine company.
Engine company. Are those things that everyone rotates through, or is that like you have to apply for that position and you get special training?
You start off as a firefighter, so you'll spend half your time working on an ambulance, half your time working on either an engine or a truck company. Typically, most of the truck companies are attracted more senior firefighters who have a little more training, a higher level of training, a little more experience. We have 23 engine companies in Sacramento. We have 10 truck companies. So there's more engine companies. Every fire station has an engine company, which provides hose and water for fire extinguishment. And then we strategically place truck companies out there. So when you call for an initial response on a fire, you would typically get 3 engines and 1 truck company. And they each have their own specific job assignments that go there. But you start off as a firefighter, then you can promote to an engineer position, which is a driver, or you can also promote to an officer position. Every piece of apparatus has a captain assigned to it. So now you're supervising a crew of 4. And then from there, you can move up into a battalion chief where you oversee a group of fire stations and their crews. And then from there, we get into more and more chief staff officers that deal with more of the administrative side and the operational side of running the fire department.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about how being an EMT and being a paramedic kind of sets you up in a good way to get into firefighting. What other educational opportunities pre-hire would be beneficial in that regard to maybe get into these competitive firefighting programs?
One of the things that is available at a lot of local school districts is an ROP or a CTE program, Career Technical Education. They usually seniors in high school can do some firefighter training with firefighters and then spend time in a firehouse kind of as an additional class in their high school schedule. A lot of high school kids that want to get in the fire service kind of seek out these programs and get involved in them. Also, after high school, community college is a perfect avenue. Most community colleges have a fire science 2-year program, which offers a multitude of classes to help prepare you. One of the main programs that is offered now is what is called Firefighter 1, which is a state certified academy process that people enroll in through their community college, and they come out of this process, which is, it's about a 400 to 500 hour program typically, and they come out of there with a state certification that makes them eligible to get hired in a lot of different departments. Larger departments like Sacramento, we will train our firefighters to that level, whereas smaller departments that don't have as much resources, they'll want to go out and get someone who has already been trained to that level. So it's a great process, and it's a great way to get yourself involved and show that you're working towards this goal of being a firefighter, that you've put forth some time to improve your education.
Okay, and kind of taking a step back, what types of people would be a good fit for being an EMT or a firefighter?
We're looking all into honest and integrity and teamwork. So because everyone has to be able to trust you to go into someone's house at the worst time and not steal anything and not talk about them to anybody else, because that's their private information. You gotta be able to work with a team. Like I said, it's a family thing. It's a family bond. I gotta be able to say, he has my back. I have his back.
Yeah, overall, it's a very physically demanding. So you got to maintain a high level of fitness, and also I think people are attracted to it that want to provide some type of service. They want to give something back. It requires a lot of sacrifice. While it does have a lot of benefits in the family, with being home for extended periods of time, you're also gone, So people that appreciate a challenge, that like to work with their hands, enjoy working outside, working with tools and equipment, things like that. Adrenaline junkies, people that they need that little jolt of something that's somewhat dangerous that pushes them to a kind of a higher level, that really challenges them both mentally and physically. That's typically the kind of person that wants to be a firefighter.
And moving on to the financial aspects of things a little bit, it seems like obviously you'd have to be in some kind of center to be a firefighter. What employment types or settings are there? Is it there'd be like the main fire stations, and then there's like also the reserves? Is that how it goes, or is there other opportunities as well?
I mean, everybody is set up somewhat similar, but all have some differences. So I worked as a firefighter for over 30 years. You earn a modest salary. You have a pension when you retire. You have an opportunity for health care benefits for you and your spouse and your family and so forth. But again, you look at what Ponce is doing here. He is volunteering his time. Our reserve program, they're unpaid, so they donate their time to the program. They work one shift every week. They train constantly, but it's also in hopes of improving their chances to get hired as a professional firefighter. It's a great avenue to learn. And to show your desire and your dedication, to get involved in something like this or whatever. But there's also other sides of the field. We work in the suppression part of the business, which directly is with EMS and fire. But there's also fire prevention opportunities where people don't work in a fire station, but they work in our fire prevention bureau, and they do building inspections, plan checks, and all that, and make sure that all the businesses and commercial areas in Sacramento are fire safe.
So there's more admin side, and there's more like on the field side.
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And so being on the reserve, that's a volunteer position, so you're giving up your time to maybe increase your odds of becoming a firefighter, improve your resume, and give back to the community and things like that. Once you do become a firefighter, what kind of like pay range can you expect? And I'm sure that increases as you go up the ranks, right?
Absolutely. So you might be able to speak to that. What is an entry-level firefighter making right now with Sacramento?
I believe it's around 80.
Yeah.
80, 75.
Yeah. I would say depending, there's incentive for different educations if you have a bachelor's degree and so forth. But yeah, I would say somewhere starting, typically when you go through the academy, our academy is 24 weeks. They are paid a very low wage through the academy, but you have to prove yourself and prove that you are worthy of the position and that you have the physical and mental capability to do the job. And then, I would say probably somewhere around 50 to 60 is pretty typical, but depending on the organization and everything, but again, when you start comparing to different professions, 56 hours a week is, it's a pretty good, it's a large amount of time, more than just a standard 40-hour work week for, a normal person. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And over your career, what could you move up to as a firefighter?
As a captain or whatever, as a company officer, typically make about $100,000 a year, maybe a little bit more than that. Chief officers can make upwards of $150,000 a year. The chief of the department, depending on the size of the department and everything, can make over $200,000 a year.
So there's definitely opportunities for advancement in the field, and obviously the job outlook's going to be great with all the things happening out in the world nowadays.
Exactly. I mean, it's busy. Mm-hmm. So, but cities are they're struggling to pay for the services. So we're like an insurance policy. We don't generate revenue, but we are here to protect the citizens. So, the money that gets dedicated to both law enforcement and fire doesn't necessarily have a financial gain, but the quality of life that it provides for the residents is, you can't put a price on that.
You mentioned before that it can be a little bit difficult to maybe balance your family life with kind of like the shift schedule. How do you establish that work-life balance with the difficult schedule that you have?
You know what? I feel like I really enjoyed it. My father was a firefighter. My brother was a firefighter. I enjoyed it because although there is time away from your family, I got to spend a lot of quality time. I raised 4 kids, so I was home for 96 hours at a time. So I was there to also provide a lot of support. My wife helped raising the kids, kind of doing the whole Mr. Mom thing, taking kids to school, picking them up, taking them to practices, events, all those kind of things. And because I wasn't locked into an 8 to 5 job, I had chunks of time off. I was able to kind of experience all different aspects of raising the family. So I very much, and then the other side of it is that firefighters love their job. So when you come home, it's a positive thing of what you're doing, and I think your family senses that, and I think it just makes for a better home life, that you have something that you come here. Sometimes our spouses are jealous of the time we spend in the fire station because we are so close to those people that we work with. They are another family, that they are competing with our own family, so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is times where I'm gone quite a bit since I volunteer here, and I just volunteer somewhere else as well. And I work a considerable amount right now with the ambulance company I work at. So I set up a calendar, tell my wife this is when I'm going to be gone, this is going to be home. And when I'm home, no phone calls or nothing. It's myself, her, and my dog. We're hanging out, going to the beach, doing something together. And I'll let her know everything that's going on, give her calls, 24 hours. Do you have time to give your spouse a call? Mm-hmm. And you love what you're doing. You're helping people out. You're having fun with your friends over here, making memories. I love it.
I'm sure being a firefighter and EMT is very emotionally taxing with all the hard things you go into. How do you deal with the emotional side of things? What tips would you give people, maybe new firefighters, new EMTs, and how do you prevent burnout?
Definitely the stigma of just leave it alone needs to go away. People need to talk to each other. A few days ago I had a kind of a hard time with a call that I went through. I called my wife. I talked to my partner, which is kind of hard because I'm part-time, so I meet different people all the time. So it was just more of a, let's get this out in the air. Let's get this out. Let's talk about this. And then if for some people that doesn't work, there's different people you can contact that you can go and sit down with you and talk to about. But definitely just let everything out in the air. Don't be afraid, they're going to judge me. I shouldn't be affected by this. This is supposed to be my job. That's not a way people should be thinking. And I've lost a few friends because they didn't talk about things and took their own lives because of it. So definitely just let everything out.
Yeah, have a release. Firefighters, they're kind of hobby driven. We have a lot of passion for things outside the fire service. And I think we do that because it's a way that we kind of release that stress and take our mind kind of off what we're doing. We try not to take our job home with us, at least the sad parts of it. But again, I think we probably talk to our spouses a lot, our kids, our friends that are in the profession. We talk to them a lot about the things that we go through, and that helps us kind of deal with it because we share common interest and you're not doing this alone. You're not walking in alone and dealing with it. So we kind of keep an eye on each other and we try and keep everybody up and positive. And like Ponce was saying, there's counseling available and all sorts of things that we that we have access to that are provided and that work wonders.
Okay, so I guess the first part's more for you, and for the next part, for both of you, how has firefighting changed since you started, and where do you see it going the next few decades?
It has changed in the sense that the call volume is crazy. Many parts of it are still the same, but protective equipment, our own personal safety, that awareness has increased probably more than anything. Firefighters today are provided way more safety as far as training and equipment goes. I would say, that in itself is probably the one thing. Cancer and those types of things have taken so many retired firefighters at the end of their career. So we're trying to protect this next generation from that exposure. We just didn't know what we didn't know then.
Do you have any regrets about your career so far? And is there anything you'd change? Or are you happy with firefighting and being EMT?
I don't have any regrets right now. I love what I'm doing, and I have a whole lifetime to get better with it. So I'm going to keep learning, keep continuing, and I'm never going to know everything. So that's the best part.
Yeah, he's got a whole career ahead of him, I have no regrets. I'm very fortunate to do 30 years. It's a young person's game, but I got out with fairly healthy, some bumps and bruises, some surgeries along the way, things like that. But it was the best 30 years of my life. I thank God that I had the opportunity to be a firefighter and that I had a career that I just loved, and the people and the friendships that I made. Better last my lifetime. So no regrets.
What tips would you give new trainees or future EMTs or future firefighters to be good EMTs and good firefighters?
Especially with EMT, when you're learning these things, understand when you're going through the book and learning the signs and symptoms and what equipment is that eventually is going to affect someone's life other than your own. So it's really crucial that you learn these things. And when I went through this firefighting academy through the reserves, learning what you're doing and being confident with it is the biggest thing, because you're not going to be practicing those skills all the time. And so when it comes up or you got to bring a tool out and use it, you definitely should be comfortable with it, because if you're not, it's going to show and it's going to affect somebody else.
Yeah, bust your butt, 100%. Buy into the culture, into the profession, and give it everything you got. I think if you take that approach, you'll succeed in the fire service 100%. It's those that don't want to give that commitment to the profession. Maybe they look at it as an easy pathway and they have other passions or things that they want to do. They don't provide that service. They don't build the respect of the people they work with. So, 100%. Give everything you can while you're here to this profession, and it will give you 100% back.
Okay, that's great advice. So thank you again both for being a part of this interview. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down below in the comment section, and I'll ask Captain Adams or Ponce, a future firefighter. and get back to you guys. Thank you again so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day. Take care.